jury's out, yeah.
So as James has shared, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the skills, issues and challenges within the creative, digital and media sector today. Really big topic and always a skills conversation when you're at these kinds of events, but we've got some really interesting views and perspectives and also sort of experiences to share today. So I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves. We'll sort of probably just go in order and then we'll get stuck into some questions and hopefully have 1 or 2 minutes at the end for audience questions, because I'm sure there'll be lots after we've heard from what the panel have to share. So, Dave, should we start with yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Dave O'Brien. I'm Professor of Culture and Creative Industries at the University of Manchester.
Richard Gahagan, CEO and founder of We Are Adam, digital marketing, HR, recruitment in the executive marketplaces.
Cool. Hi, I'm Tom Oulton. I'm Head of Digital Transformation at a construction consultancy called Levett, Bucknall.
Good morning, I'm Andreea Avramescu. I am one of the directors at Infor, overseeing operations, learning experience, and usually client management as well.
Wonderful. So we're going to get stuck into some sort of questions now. So we know that our country actually has huge, significant skills challenges, but sort of looking at ourselves as a region, what do you think are the unique issues and challenges that our region has within the creative, digital and media sector? And Andreea, did you want to start us off?
Again, absolutely, thank you. I'm sure there are many challenges, but I would want to emphasize on a particular one, that I work on a daily basis probably with about 100 people that would like to start a career related in tech, something general. But the access to this information is still not always there. They don't always know what is possible, what opportunities are, what careers, and how to access those. And I would say that is probably something that is a challenge in itself, but it also gives us a really big opportunity to kind of emphasize exactly how big of a hub our region is and all the opportunities that we are currently offering. So I would say that is probably from my side.
And from your experience, is there anything in particular you're doing to sort of help to create and raise awareness of those pathways into opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. So Infor in itself, we are a technology group. So what we try to do, and what we are always saying, is humanizing technology. So we try to really put people at the front of technology, because no matter how good you are and no matter how good technology is going to become, unless there is people behind it and unless there is people to drive what technology can become and what technology can do, it's not really going to become and hit its full potential. So what we are doing, we are talking to people that might not have considered a career in tech, or maybe they haven't considered exact opportunities, or they don't know where to start. And we try to explain to them in a plain language, in simple English, what is out there, what is the best route, and how can they reach their potential, and how can they access these careers, really.
Thanks, Andreea. I suppose, Dave, from your perspective and from the University of Manchester's perspective, have you noticed any sort of unique challenges that we have within this industry for our region?
Yeah, there's probably one big challenge, which is workforce and to an extent audience diversity. And I'll break that down in 4 ways. The first one is Manchester's workforce needs to be much more diverse, whether it's to be representative of Manchester or whether it's to be representative of Britain more generally. This has a bunch of questions that are associated with things like Manchester's infrastructure. So, the transport system getting more integrated is good, but the housing crisis really has, severe impacts for workforce diversity. The skills pipeline really doesn't work, and what we observe for creative workers is that they're some of the, I was going to say the worst, but that's not the right term, but they're some of the least likely to do kind of in-career training once they leave their degrees. And then the final thing is a kind of broader pipeline issue. So at the moment, University of Manchester, the UCU union there is we're all on strike and over kind of working conditions and pensions. And given that the university is such a massive kind of anchor institution for the creative sector, thinking about actually, not just Manchester, but MMU, Salford, and the kind of broader university economy, we need to think much more carefully about the relationship between universities, graduates, and the place where they live, and particularly bringing graduates back in to do the kind of skills development they need later in life, and then connecting this to where are we building, where will they live.
Absolutely. And I can imagine something there as well around people who are retraining, so people who perhaps want to get into industry and they're already, have great careers. How do we support them to understand what those sort of pathways are? As well as sort of learning education from a recruiter's perspective. The membership body, Manchester Digital, forecasted that there'll be an intense battle to kind of acquire and retain talent within the city that will kind of become more heated up to kind of 2030 and onwards. So from a recruiter's background, kind of Richard, what are your views on whether you've noticed any trends in that space, and are you using any sort of approaches or any data and intelligence to help to kind of find the right talent?
So quick answer is absolutely. There's some surprising trends. There's the trends that you'd probably expect around shortages of talent. It's been going for 15 years around developers, tech, that kind of thing. Probably the more surprising thing is as you get into the mid-senior tech market space, there's now competition, not just because of the shortage of talent, but actually a lot of agencies are moving to Eastern Europe post-Brexit. You've got other challenges around, like you said, the shortage of grads coming into it. So it's got a lot more pressure than it probably was forecast 5 years ago, albeit it's the first time in 15 years that actually the recruitment market for IT has actually shrunk in Manchester. So that's probably the surprising statistic off the back of it. And then I think if you look at additional challenges, obviously the pandemic brought in the hybrid debate, and probably everybody in the room hears the hybrid debate every single day around data and what works. And it's amazing how many businesses are still arguing one or the other. And I think the most important data you've got to look at is to go to your business, go to your team, and we go to our clients and talk about consultation, make sure you get it right. It's not the same for every single business, and making sure that, yes, bringing in talent's important, but you won't retain staff, for example, if you're not looking at the right strategies around agile working, flexible, that sort of stuff as well. And then you touched on diversity. I think diversity is obviously huge. The obvious points that have been, still an ongoing battle, but neurodiversity, it's obviously for the right businesses, it's a great strategy to get that right, to widen your talent base, to use it as a retention tool, to make sure your employer brand is impacted in the right way. So I guess it's just there's more if you like, issues tackling each part of it, but those are the kind of key trends we've seen.
And Tom, just to bring yourself in as well on this particular topic around that kind of recruitment aspect, I suppose from a industry perspective from where you kind of work, have there been sort of any trends that you've noticed around recruitment?
Well, being on the construction side of things and working on that construction consultancy, actually, Manchester's a fantastic hub for us. It's a great place to be. The bigger the city, the more it attracts our staff and the easier it is to recruit. So actually, Manchester's a bit of a bonus, a bit of a boom area for us. There's so much construction work going on that we're involved with that actually it's easy for us to attract people over to the wrong side of the Pennines. Whereas we've got offices, we're based in, we've got offices in Leeds and Sheffield as well, but people are feeling the pull over here because there's more stuff going on. And actually, Manchester's a fantastic place to be. It's almost got an integrated transport network, which Yorkshire doesn't. So it is actually a great place to be, and it's somewhere I love coming. And for us, it's not difficult to recruit. It is difficult to recruit people with exactly the right skills, but we'll be getting onto that in a second.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about diversity, I suppose, across those couple of questions, and it seems to be kind of hot topic at a lot of events that you go to. So some information here about some kind of research that we're going to sort of go and talk a little bit more in detail about. So Creative UK have said that the industry are creating jobs 3 times the UK average and are employing 2 million across the UK. But I suppose for me it's who are those people and are they kind of representative of the places of which the companies are based. So not only linked to race and ethnicity and gender, but also class. Even having a northern accent, often you go to things, especially in London, and it's kind of like they think, where on earth are you from? So I do think class as well is a really important factor to be kind of considered a little bit more in this conversation. So research from the Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Centre found that UK's creative industries would need to employ 250,000 more working class people to be socio-economically diverse as the rest of the economy. So how are your organisations unlocking new talent and diversifying the sector's talent pipeline across all levels? But I think before we kind of go into that, Dave, we're really curious to find out a little bit more about this research because I know you were a core part of that.
Yeah, thanks. So myself and my colleagues did that work, and there's maybe 3 things to say on it. One is social class, I suppose, have been as you'd mentioned, kind of absent from a lot of the debates. And the thing we tried to do with our research was say, we can't see it on its own, we've got to think about it as it intersects with race, with gender, with disability. In terms of those numbers, I think what's particularly shocking is the way that we see like pay gaps depending on someone's social class. We see real struggles to get into whether it's university courses or just getting your kind of foot in the door from a practical point of view if you need to do something like unpaid work or whatever. And although Manchester doesn't have the same sort of inequalities in terms of its housing market as London does, Manchester still has these really significant issues. And then the third thing is everybody hates academics when they're like, oh, look at all these problems, we're not going to do anything about it. But with that research, we tried to kind of kick on and say, what are some practical things that we know that work from other sectors? And so a variety of things like skills-based interviews and recruitment processes, rather than just looking at, what's the university on the CV, all the way through to really getting kind of senior management to sort of champion the idea that an organisation wants to be diverse, and kind of, leadership plus practical changes seem to be what's been effective in, say, financial services.
Really interesting. And Andreea, from your perspective, from kind of the HR and people approach, have you kind of been delivering any good practice around the diversity conversation?
I would say that is probably an ongoing conversation. It should be an ongoing conversation at all times. So I wouldn't say there is something that was already fixed and already done. But I would say everybody has different challenges. And there is not that if somebody has a particular set of challenges that you are not seeing, that doesn't mean they don't have the same set of challenges. So it is maybe ask more questions if that is appropriate for that particular person, but if not, don't feel that they need to give you a justification in that regard. It doesn't mean that if there is something that they cannot share, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, I would say as well. And there is always this, make sure there is a space, there is a quiet space. I see many people, regardless, whenever they need to concentrate, they need this quiet space sometimes. So there are a few approaches in that regard. We also, many of our courses, we deliver them online. So many of our programs are online. Some people want to have their cameras on at some point, but some people don't. So it's all about making sure that you are allowing this accessibility. And then most of the time it happens, and there was a scenario that somebody said, I will have my camera off, just so you know, throughout, because I don't feel comfortable. It's like, that's okay. And it ended up being the person that had the camera on all the time, because at the end, that person said, it was a really welcoming environment, and it was something that I felt nobody is going to judge me from the other end if I have my camera on. So it does, repeating this, that we are all sometimes home, sometimes in the office. We all have background noises. We all have a pet maybe in the background making noises. I don't, I wish I did. But, so it's all about making a welcoming environment, and then you would see that the persons that need more help, they will also let you know about that help from my perspective.
Definitely, and shifting that culture as an employer, and understanding that everybody isn't going to come from the same starting point, and they have kind of different experiences that they want to kind of engage with to make them feel comfortable. And how about yourself, Richard, from your perspective?
So I think our role is obviously quite third party, so our main influence is really when we deal with companies, and I can speak freely in here, but obviously no names mentioned, but the elephant in the room really is that you do see a lot of companies and they are box ticking, and you've got to break down the box tickers. So we challenge people, we won't work with them, we'll make sure it's a genuine assignment that is written in the right way, that's spec'd in the right way. And I'm not saying that's still a huge problem, but that's been something we've observed for the last 10, 15 years. I think then you go beyond that and you look at people who are a world away from that, who look at it as it's the sensible thing, it's the ethically right thing, it's the commercially right thing, it's fixing all the talent shortages that people have got. It becomes a very, very obvious meeting when you meet people who have got the right ethics and the right morals, but also the right commercial strategy. So that's probably at the senior end what we see. And then on a personal level, just with children in school and that kind of stuff, it's probably more looking at the advice people are getting and making sure that, obviously like Dave, very forward thinking, but a lot of education in schools level is actually thinking in the right way. It's not forcing kids that, you're not going to get the right jobs if you don't go to university. There's not a snobbery around degree apprenticeships, which for me are the best thing in the world, because the cost for a lot of people is taken out of it. And removing that snobbery around the fact that actually does that industry even need a degree? Is it better for all the great training that's on offer, not just in Manchester but across the UK? And really break down the stigma of this old-fashioned education system of degree and the hierarchy, which is really, I think, what holds a lot of the problem back.
I mean, I know we had a conversation as well as we had our sort of pre-meet about the panel, because there were some views around, you know, gender of people that are on panels, and I often get asked to go to stuff as a youngish still black woman, and it's challenging people and sort of asking them, you know, who else is on the panel and have you got kind of diverse representation. So I think just noticing and being aware of that stuff and saying it out loud is sometimes a good place to start as well. And Tom, still on the same conversation, how about yourselves? I can imagine within your industry there have been some challenges there with shifting culture.
There
and
have been,
diversity.
but a lot of it's to do with the perception of construction as high vis and some reading numpties. But one of the beauties of construction is it's so ubiquitous. You know, it represents nearly 10% of the UK economy. Is that because of that we get a very wide intake, so we're able to identify talent really easily because we are very structured and we understand what's. You know, we can easily spot people who are successful, and that doesn't necessarily who have the successful traits, and that doesn't necessarily depend on that educational background, because we, particularly within industry as well, a lot of the best courses at university, if you go to university, aren't from your red brick universities, aren't from Oxford and Cambridge. They're actually from the old polys, because they're set up to deliver the skills that we need, and then. Once people are in the industry, it's within our organisations, it's easy to identify who's good. And one of the things that is at the centre of recruitment is diversity, because we've got a lot of work to do to get rid of that public perception of what construction is, but it's not. It's a really creative industry. One of my problems is STEM. People bang on about STEM subjects all the time, you know, these science, tech, engineering and maths, and that's not what we need in construction. I'm making a plea to get to put an A in there, STEAM, for alternative backgrounds, because we need creatives in. And the more we widen our scope away from just what we used to, that's when we become better and we start becoming inventive and start getting better solutions to the built environment, because that's what we want. Because we were talking about the Manchester strategy is that you want to create. You've got all these societal pressures and outcomes that you're trying to achieve. You can't achieve that if we just build what we've always built all the time. So we need to have a slightly different view on that. So it's easy to recruit what we know. It's difficult to recruit what we don't, and that's where we struggle.
And those business benefits as well, as you were saying, Richard, you know, it isn't just a nice to have, it's obvious. So with advertising, if somebody's working on a project and they're wanting to engage with an audience that they come from, then it makes much more sense for somebody who can understand different types of communities to kind of be a part of that work. So I think it needs to become much more about that as well. A diverse workforce is absolutely essential across all diversities, neurodiverse, sex, gender, whatever. It's absolutely crucial to get that really creative way of thinking and just to mix things up, because if you classic phrase everyone's heard, if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got, and that's quite often a bad thing. So it's really important that we embrace diversity, and we're trying to do that. So I'll move us on a little bit to talk about skills and future proofing. So we've talked a lot today around sort of economic growth and how fast the pace of the industry is growing, and kind of having that skills gap of being a challenge to continue that growth. So from perspectives of people on the panel, what are the skills that will kind of future-proof their career in industry and like the sectors that contribute to our economy? And Andreea, we'll start off with yourself.
Yes, thank you. Another one of those topics I could give a lecture for 2 to 3 hours, but I want to focus on a couple of key points that I think are really important. And the first one is digital literacy. I know everybody is saying that, but sometimes people try to run before they actually walk. And there is this old joke that says AI is going to take over because it can implement and it can solve the problem directly. But then it comes back saying that, yeah, but the AI needs to know step by step exactly what the client wants. And that's where the problem comes, because the client sometimes doesn't know how to explain step by step to the tool how to do. And this is where digital literacy actually comes in. Because a few years back, our biggest problem was, you are muted. Can you please unmute yourself because I can't hear you? And that our biggest problem wasn't how do we implement the most complex machine learning algorithm with the most complex neural network behind it. And we still had to jump over that quite a bit. And then this would be one focus that I would say, now, whether we like or not, we are working in tech, with tech, in one way or another. So knowing a little bit about it and how it works and how we can make the most out of it is probably going to be essential for everybody, regardless of the role. And then if I am to pinpoint maybe into one skill, I would try to focus to the skills related to the cloud, because now we are still not using, sometimes we are using a lot of hardware, but it is proving to be not as efficient as we would like. And the cloud is giving us more and more of that technology, and we can move towards the cloud. So really understanding the benefits and what it, in terms of saving the money, in terms of accessibility, in terms of being able to access your resources from wherever, that is a really, really strong point that we are currently having, and it is developing further. And then all that really brings, and the bridge behind that is the soft skills. Coming back to maybe my first point as well, is that you need to know what you want from the technology, and you need to put persons at the front of technology and to humanize it in a way. And linking these soft skills, I have, well, for my friends and family, I am Dr. Andreea, because I felt they lost the right to call me Andreea when I finished my PhD after so many years. For everyone else, I'm just Andreea. So I can talk about really complex things, sometimes, maybe, usually. But it really does surprise me whenever I forget about the soft skills and how important somebody that just has a different idea, a different approach, a different way of thinking about the problem really is. Because I can implement easily, but I only have one idea, one view of that. And that is having an interdisciplinary background, but somebody that's really focused on technology. This is where really people should understand that the soft skills and bringing this interdisciplinary view really gives the advantage and the strength that technology actually is, I would say.
Really interesting, thanks, Andreea. And Dave, from your perspective, from the university's perspective?
So myself and some colleagues are working with this all-party parliamentary group on creative diversity, and we're publishing this big thing on creative education next month. And the thing that I'm most interested in is how do we set up frameworks that basically allow people to do that skills development in ways that are flexible and responsive. So currently, the apprenticeship system, I got told off for saying this, but basically is a disaster in terms of the creative economy. We start with the fact that creative apprenticeships basically don't even exist before we get to what are people learning on them, who are the providers, how are they being assessed, what kind of currency do those qualifications gain in the labour market. And I think this runs all the way up to things like degree apprenticeships. So it's clear that particularly when people are returning to work, whether they're maybe women coming back to creative jobs after they've had time out on maternity, or people seeking to retrain later in life, the kind of traditional 3-year undergraduate isn't particularly flexible, it doesn't really work for them. But there is this big kind of gap where finding a qualification that allows you to learn those range of skills that are not, I know how to program, so I know how to program forever, but rather I've got a range of flexible skills. And I think particularly degree apprenticeships are something that both like my university, but the sector needs to take much more seriously, especially as I think they offer, not entirely, but some promise in terms of diversifying the sector for especially kind of later career workers.
So lots there around kind of those softer skills, but often when we have conversations with employers, they are advertising for those kind of more specialised skills. So I suppose, Richard, starting off with yourself, what your employers been looking for around future-proofing their sort of workforce?
Yeah, so I was going to say, in terms of the very, very good points around digital, the obvious points, and I think the resilience piece as well is one where, so if you're going into an environment where now it is very agile, you might not see your boss, you might not have those water cooler moments, you've got to be somebody who can seek that out in whatever working environment you are. I do feel sorry for people who get called a snowflake generation, and yet they're the ones who are now working agile, who are probably facing challenges that none of us of my age anyway that have faced. So I think learning about actually being proactive, learning about actually can you work agile, things, great points about using a screen, joining Teams meetings, but also all those skills about how you got on in life, how you learnt from your boss, how you got, found the courses. So being super proactive. When I talk to certainly 16 to 21-year-olds in education, it's how do you go and find things that you might normally have found, say 20 years ago in natural corporate environment. So, but in terms of it, for me, I do, sounds a bit old school, is resilience. It's proactive learner, go out and actually seek things that people don't, and don't follow the traditional path. Don't be afraid to break the norm, and who needs a degree if you can get a degree apprenticeship, for example.
Tom?
On a purely practical level, and this is why I'm here at a creative conference, but with a construction background, is I'm here to poach all the best staff. Is the same skill sets and the same softwares that are used in animation, creating Toy Story or all those animated films, creating games designs, the games designers, you speak to the kids who are into, I want to be a games designer, I want to create animated films, brilliant, do it. But come and work for me with exactly the same skill set and earn more than twice as much, because we use the same software. It's all developed the same. So it's just taking that creative mind but employing it differently. And those exact skills are exactly what we're after, because you're already thinking differently, and then you're earning more money with me. So, and then you can do whatever. So yeah, and also yes, we need the soft skills. We need people that can communicate. Without that, there's nothing. But you can do it for more money in my place.
I bet that'll get a few people excited to come and work there with you as well. So we've got a little bit of time. We've got like 3 minutes left, maybe. Are there any questions from our wonderful audience?
No, it's fully satisfied them.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really a question. There's a couple of reports that are coming out, sorry, as I say, there are a couple of reports that have been mentioned that are either coming out or already out, and I wondered whether we could get access to them, or they'll be circulated, or a link.
Yeah, I can send them around. Really, straightforwardly. Yeah, that's fine.
We'll ask Rachel to put them in the follow. She'll do a follow-up email and we can pop some stuff in there. If you share them with us.
Yeah.
So if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to ask the panel for sort of final call to action for everyone here today based on your views around skills and challenges within the industry. What's your sort of final call to action that you want to leave everyone here with today? You want to start?
Yeah. I suppose the conversation has been a lot about what individuals need to be doing, and I'd also say I think the challenge is what do organisations, whether they're businesses, universities, councils, regional, national governments, what do they need to do differently as well? Because I think often when we're talking about particularly labour market kind of mismatches in terms of skills needs, it all ends up with why aren't individuals doing what we need, rather than how do we as an organisation act differently so we kind of fit the individuals that we've got.
Absolutely. Richard?
Mine would be in your organisation, if you're the leader of it or if you work in it, go and look for the elephant in the room. Go and challenge if you've got doubts about whether the sustainability strategy, the diversity strategy is actually genuine or authentic, or at least whether it's genuine or authentic but it's not got the traction it needs, and see what kind of impact you can make internally.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really important for us is to give everybody a voice, and to make sure that when people have got ideas about why things aren't working or how they want to do something differently, is to allow people to do that differently, to have that trust and communication with your staff up and down the chain, that just allows people to do what they need to do and to do what they want to do. And when people keep saying, I think we can do it better, actually to trust that they know what they're talking about. Because, I'm in my 50s now. I don't know what's current. I don't know what new solutions are there, because I'm already in my furrow, one of the things that I'm really keen to do, which is why we're talking about the diverse workforce, not just of all backgrounds but of ages, is loads of people have got so much more idea about different things that I don't. But what I do know is how we can employ it to make things better for the company as a whole. So always be open to the conversations and always be ready to hear any voice.
Last but not least.
Thank you. very difficult to be the last one after such amazing answers. But I would probably say for everybody to just challenge themselves first before looking at who can do that, and just challenge what do you know, what you don't know, what you would like to know about that, where is the field, where does it stand, and then understand your gaps, understand how you can help your people as well, following from this. And tech is nice, you should try it.
I'm going to be really naughty and sneak one in dead quick as well. I know we're up to time, but share good practice, because people get very excited when it comes to this conversation, and it feels like the conversation's been happening for a long time. But share good practice, because if we don't know what's working, we end up kind of ploughing funds and energy into stuff that doesn't actually reap benefit. So let's thank our wonderful panel, Dave, Richard, Tom and Andreea.